From a flightless simulator at Ferris Air to a momentous meeting in an alley, to the complex mind of an architect, to every far sector in space, and to the brilliance of the central power battery on Oa. This is the podcast that covers the adventures of all of your favorite ring slingers. This is the Emerald Echo with your hosts, Adam and the Emerald Enthusiast.
Welcome to another episode of Emerald Echo, a Green Lantern podcast and vidcast. As always, I'm your host, Adam, and with me is my co-host, the Emerald Enthusiast himself, Donnie. Donnie, how's it going?
What's up, ring slingers? It's the man whose ring runs on fanboy energy, the podcasting machine, the big nerd in green. It's the Emerald Enthusiast, and we're back with another episode of the Emerald Echo.
And another year, because it's by the time you're listening and watching this, it's 2025, which I like to call the year of Superman, because we are getting the Superman movie this year.
That's right.
It's still too far away from my liking, but
I know July seems like a long time now, doesn't it?
such is life, and supposedly good things come to those who wait. The Leaf fan in me doesn't believe that, but maybe the Superman fan in me will believe that come July. But it is what it is. But we are in the year of Superman. We're also in the year of when Green Lantern or Lanterns, I should say, starts filming. As from the talk around town is that it's going to start filming early February. So we are in the year of Lanterns filming. And of course, with the Superman teaser trailer that we recently got over the holiday period, was the first debut footage of Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner. Donnie, as you know, I put out a sort of emergency episode that I recorded with Sam Rizzo, a friend of mine and podcaster, where we gave our trailer reactions. It was such an emergency episode that I didn't want to waste time having Donnie add, music and the title card. I just wanted to get our thoughts out there. So it's very bare bones. And I had to be on my best behavior, so as not to have anything to edit. So that was different. But we put it out there. But what were your reactions to the teaser in general? And then, of course, we'll talk about Guy Gardner, the brief snippet of Guy Gardner that we got.
I'm really excited about the new era of DC movies we're going to see. And I say this as a fan of, the old movies from the last, when I say old, I mean the previous regime, the last 10 years or so. There are different ways to tell DC stories. And I'm not excited about everything, specifically crypto, but when I saw that trailer, I was like, this feels very different than what we've been seeing. So let's give it a shot. I like I like the visuals, what they did with the way Superman looked, some of the motion in it.
Some color in this franchise again. It's nice.
Yeah, it's nice. I think the suit looks really nice, and of course, I knew that the Snyder Bros were going to go nuts on it and say that it's not as good as Henry Cavill's, yada yada yada. They made it look different, and I think it looks functional. It looks like a uniform, so I like it.
Well, they can complain about the suit all they want. Call me when Henry Cavill Superman develops a personality. Spoiler alert, it's not happening.
And hey, you know what? You and I, we've talked about this before. I really liked Henry Cavill's version of Superman. That doesn't mean I can't go on and say, let's look at something different.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I took away from it is that he did his job in showcasing a difference. Mm-hmm. Like there's no confusing that this is a continuation of anything. I'm in the opposite end of the spectrum with you in terms of Crypto, is that I actually love seeing him, and that's shocking considering I'm not a dog lover. I mentioned in the episode where I have a fear of dogs to the point where if I was a superhero, if I became a superhero, partly became Batman because of his fear of bats. I'd be Dogman, which would be the most unappealing superhero in the world. And the book would probably be canceled after one issue, but I digress. But so the fact that Crypto's appearance actually made me smile, it says something about James Gunn's abilities.
And you're not alone. Like I said, and I don't want to misrepresent my feelings here. I love actual dogs. I just don't like those characters like Crypto being included in this type of story.
Yeah, okay.
I didn't mind Crypto and the Super Pets being, that particular self-contained story for that movie.
Well, my thing is, as long as he doesn't talk, I think talking is where I would sort of, it would be a little bit of a bridge. Maybe too far for me, but then again,
I understand. Yeah, and I don't mind superheroes having pets either. But that was the only thing I saw in the trailer. Where, okay, so Superman's hurt and he calls for his dog, and I'm like, oh my gosh. But other than that,
but then again, I say that as somebody who thought Guardians of the Galaxy was going to be Marvel's first flop, and then, like everybody else, I ended up loving the talking raccoon and the talking tree. So,
yeah, you know what? And hey, and that's a great point, because when I was a kid, I actually had an issue of the Incredible Hulk that had Rocket Raccoon in it, and I didn't like the fact that Rocket Raccoon was there.
Yeah,
that annoyed me.
Yeah,
but I thought it worked in the movie.
Yeah.
So
there you go. I mean, it's like you never know.
Keep an open mind.
Right, and so, but then we did get a millisecond of Green Lantern footage in the form of Guy Gardner, played by Nathan Fillion. And I liked what I saw. I mean, the hairstyle is ripped right out of the 80s, his 80s appearance. The JLI kind of iteration of the character, which is what James Gunn was going for. Even in his two facial expressions that he made, and I think the artist that drew him made this commentary. It looks like something I drew, and the facial expressions are very Guy Gardner, and I'm like, that's Guy Gardner, and you can tell when. Because what happened was, after I watched the trailer, and me and Sam and I recorded that piece, I got sucked into the void of watching trailer reactions, and you can tell who was reacting that had read comics, and who was reacting that were not comic readers or were like purely MCU people, because. Every time they saw the snippet of Guy Gardner, the non-comic people were like, "Oh, that hairstyle is ridiculous." And every time I saw that, I'm like, "Yes," and that's the point.
And that's the point, exactly.
He's supposed to look ridiculous.
Yeah.
He did look ridiculous. He looked obnoxious. He was, and sometimes still is, obnoxious. That's the character, and
the really ostentatious boots, the vest and the hairstyle made him stand out. That was the point.
Yeah. And so, like, I got all that from looking at his hair and his facial expressions. I'm like, yeah, that's Guy. Like, there was no dialogue, but again, I'm like, yeah, that's Guy Gardner. Now, I've long said that the reason why they're in those predominantly white suits is because I think James Gunn is creating what he's trying to show is basically a government-funded, via Maxwell Lord, a government-funded team of heroes, right? That once they are exposed to Superman, we'll see the sort of the error of their way of doing things, and then Superman will guide him, be the guide of how the ideal of heroism that they all sort of strive for, right? So, so I think that the uniform look that they have, even though Guy Gardner's uniform has green in it, right? The fact that it's predominantly white, I think that's purposely done right now. And then, as the Green Lantern appearances move forward, there'll be more individual and Green Lantern centric.
Right, specific, yes.
If you catch my drift.
Let me interject this. One of the first things that popped into my mind after seeing the trailer and the trailer reaction was a conversation that Harrison Ford once had with Mark Hamill. Mark Hamill, during the shooting of Star Wars, took an issue with the fact that, you remember when he's in the trash compactor, they're all in the trash compactor, right?
Yeah.
The next scene when they come out, there's a scene briefly where Mark Hamill's hair is not wet. And he was complaining to George. He was like, look, my hair should be wet, which he's right, by the way. But Harrison Ford took him aside and said, kid, it's not that kind of movie. He's like, they shouldn't be looking at your hair. And he's right. It's all about the action. So when I saw Guy Gardner with the facial expressions you're talking about, striding into, it looked like a bank or whatever, with all of that confidence, shoots that ring, shoots the beam out of that ring. The energy looked great. I'm like, that's Guy Gardner. Yes, the hairstyle looks silly, but again, it's like you say, that's comic accurate from the 80s.
It's supposed to, yeah.
Exactly. And just like, with the uniform, it doesn't mean that's the only uniform he's going to wear. Maybe he slicks his hair back and, by the end of the movie or whatever. The bottom line is we're getting Guy Gardner, a Green Lantern that I wondered if we'd ever see in live action.
Yeah.
So when I saw that, it was exhilarating to see that. And Nathan Fillion knows this mythos. So he's surely done his homework. And that few seconds that we saw made me very optimistic about Guy in this new universe of movies.
And if you've seen any performance by Nathan Fillion, he can play the characteristics of Guy Gardner.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing, is like comic accuracy and look is one thing, but at the end of the day, the core essential characteristics of the character have to be there. And can the actor playing him pull those characteristics off? The answer is yes. And so that's why I'm just excited. And I think the other cool thing to mention is that when he shoots his ring and the energy blast at the window to cover up the window, it's to assist Superman, who's going through something.
Right.
So, and what I think it speaks to is what James Gunn had said, is that these characters are there with a purpose, and that purpose is to serve Superman's story.
Yeah.
It's not just cameo fest for the sake of cameo fest.
Yeah. I took a lot of comfort in that. My concern there's two concerns that I have with this movie, and one I think is kind of assuaged a little bit with the trailer. I didn't want Guy to just be comic relief, because there's been times in the comics that he was like that. He annoys Hal and Hal beats him up. He annoys John beats him up, that kind of thing. Sure. I didn't want his first appearance to be that. My other concern is that they won't be creative enough with the ring. Now, we'll have to wait and see on that. I want to see him make, armor and weapons and things like that, not just ring blasts. But, for now, I'm optimistic about what I saw. So let's not jump the gun and just, automatically assume that they're not going to do that.
It's also worth noting that after the trailer came out, there was an article. I believe it was Entertainment Weekly, but don't quote me on that. It was one of those kind of magazine or outlets, magazines. I don't know if they even print a magazine anymore. Yes, I know they print magazines. I meant EW specifically for those people that. Of course, they still print magazines. Yeah, I know.
I know what you mean. Yeah. I think they're more collector's items now than actual people who read. Yeah. The percentage of people who just read magazines has got to be pretty small now.
Probably, yeah. But in that article, they sort of confirmed that Nathan Fillion is expected to reprise the role in the Lanterns series. So that I think is worth noting. Pretty good. So also something to look forward to going forward with Guy Gardner. And so, seeing that, but again, like seeing, for the purpose of this podcast, Green Lantern specifically, after, let's see, 10, 14 years of not having live action Green Lantern content,
unless you want to count either Yalen Gur or Jade on Stargirl. So
I'm talking big screen, and Yalen Gur was just Zack Snyder.
I like that, but it was very much a...
Listen, they pissed all over the Green Lantern ideology by not having them present when Dark Side crap was going on, so I don't count that. Like, it's a nice throwaway Easter egg, but I don't count that. And I don't count somebody that filmed scenes in CGI pajamas in a director's backyard that didn't make a cut as a live-action representation of Green Lantern. I'm sorry. I know there are people online that do. I don't. Unless he appears in the movie and has a meaningful thing, and was officially hired by the studio paying the bill, which he wasn't, I don't count it. So you guys can keep counting what you count, but I don't. But what I mean is, it's nice to see Green Lantern coming back to the big screen in a meaningful way, in a more substantial way, and knowing that appearance is going to lead to a live action series on HBO, which, coming off of the quality of the Penguin, right?
Yeah.
And seeing, like HBO just doesn't, they don't greenlight. If they put something on their platform, it's not run of the mill, something you could get on any other network stuff. It's typically top tier programming. So,
and I just want to interject here that I saw a video of Aaron Pierre getting some Christmas gifts. One of the things he got was a Green Lantern comic.
And I love the fact that how passionate and excited he is.
Yeah. He understands the weight that he's carrying with Jon Stewart.
Like, he's on Kelly Clarkson or whatever show he was on, and he's talking about Justice League animated series, and I'm like, I love this guy.
Yeah.
Like, this is stuff. And you know what? I'll be honest with you. This is so refreshing, like seeing the little snippet of Guy Gardner, knowing that we're getting a series, and having someone like Aaron Pierre, talk about Green Lantern the way he talks about him. It's so refreshing after years of listening to Ryan Reynolds crap on the character. Like, look, I love Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool. Mm-hmm. He's a little bit one note of an actor, because once you've seen one Ryan Reynolds performance, you've pretty much seen them all. Like, he has that in common with Dwayne Johnson, the actor. Notice I separated it from The Rock because it's two different things. But him and Dwayne Johnson have that in common, where they have a very limited range in terms of their acting scope. But nonetheless, I love Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool. But I'm tired of the constant trashing of Green Lantern. Like, enough.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I get it.
The joke is over.
Yeah.
Like, you met your wife on that friggin' movie, and she's smoking hot, be happy, and you've got kids with her, move on. And you're a billionaire because of Deadpool. Like, just move on.
Right.
So this is a much more refreshing.
But just to play, for the sake of fairness, I think in the last few years he has become a little bit more of an advocate for that movie. To say.
He's still going on about the.
Yeah, I mean, and he does that. He's like, he's admitted, he's like, look, I had a lot of fun at the movie's expense, but it's not that bad. So.
But either way, it's nice to finally be in a place where you have people talking positively about Green Lantern. And again, just knowing that Aaron Pierre is a fan of Jon Stewart.
Yes.
Again, it's not a prerequisite for playing the part. You don't have to be a fan of something to play the part, but it's an added bonus when the guy playing the character understands who the character is supposed to be and has a reverence for that character. So like, it's all that to say is this is a very exciting time.
No, I would agree. And the fact that we're getting 3 different Green Lanterns. So for people who were introduced to the concept of the Green Lantern Corps through the Justice League or through the Green Lantern the animated series, even if they've never seen the movie, they still have an idea of there being multiple Green Lanterns.
Sure.
And distinct characters. And so there's not this confusion like there seemed to be, at least to some degree, that there was in 2011.
Sure. Yeah. No, it's so nice that we already have 3 known Green Lanterns. With the possibility, because if you think about it, like right now, we assume that Green Lantern or Lanterns is a 1-season thing, and then he's going to springboard into movies, right? That's the assumption.
Sure.
However, let's also keep in mind that there is now talk about a season 2 for the Penguin, when that was only supposed to be a limited series. So,
but it did so well. So, if Lanterns does well, I mean, who knows? Sky's the limit.
But either way, whether they continue on in movies or more seasons or both, the fact that we already have 3 opens up the door for, Kyle Rayner, Jessica Cruz, Simon Bass. Like, the possibility is there, as opposed to the last decade, which was, oh, look at the owl, by the way, here's the afterthought that was Green Lantern in a 10-second scene. When Darkseid's come to Earth, and you'd think the Green Lanterns would react, but no, here's just the...
Yeah. Well, you and I have talked about that at length. That's my biggest problem with the Snyderverse, and I don't necessarily put this on Zack Snyder because I don't know who made these decisions.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is, all this stuff is going down, and Green Lantern wasn't there.
So like the fact that we have 3 is already...
Yeah. So no Green Lanterns, no Guardians for all of those like earth-shaking events.
Yeah.
And so just kind of by default, the fact that we're going to start with 3 different Green Lanterns means they're handling the property better this time than they did the previous outing.
Right, exactly. So it's all to say, again, I'm nothing but excitement coming from me. And like I said, the sooner it starts filming, the better, because that means we'll be getting more pieces of info trickling out, and we'll see what the potential costume looks like, and for John and Kyle.
John and Hal, you mean?
Sorry. How did you say? Now that I mentioned there's a possibility for more than just one, now I'm getting confused.
Yeah.
But yeah, John and Hal and whoever else may be in there.
I've had so many dreams about Kyle popping up in a movie or on a show. It's
Well, you can have the dreams of Kyle, and I'll dream of Carol Ferris and all the other people. But
we're going to talk about Carol Ferris here. She's been playing a prominent role in the comics.
That's pretty much all the news we have for right now. But again, throughout the course of the year, we're bound to get a lot more, given the fact that filming is a mere month or so away. So stay tuned, and we'll have more as it drops. But what we'll do now is we'll take a quick break and then come back on the other side and catch up with the mainline Green Lantern series. And we'll be reviewing issues 12 through 16 and the Civil Corps special, correct?
Yes.
All right, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Don't go anywhere.
What's up, everyone? It's the Emerald Enthusiast. For all of your multiverse viewing and listening needs, check out our shows, which include Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Ghostbusters, Power Rangers, the Marvel Universe, and the DC Universe, including the Emerald Echo podcast. You can check us out on Podbean, and remember to subscribe right here on YouTube. That's the Multiverse Musings Podcast Network. From the first podcast to the last.
And we're back.
Indeed we are. And again, we are continuing our coverage and our catch-up on the mainline Green Lantern series written by Jeremy Adams with art by Zermanico. Mm-hmm. Funny that I mentioned catch-up as in catching up, but there is catch-up in one of these issues, and we'll get to that when we get to that. But
I just want to point out the cover too. This is a really beautiful cover.
it is.
Featuring Hal and Carol as Star Sapphire.
And they're kissing, so
yeah, that would make a great poster. Let me tell you.
From the first kiss to the last motif is literally being explored on that cover. All right, so what's going down in this issue? Where do you want to start?
Well, we're going to start at the very first page. It says OA Resistance Core Base, and we see some of the United Planets lanterns with some of the regular Green Lantern Corps, the dwindling number of Green Lanterns from the previous version of the Green Lantern Corps, and they are prisoner. And we see here 2-6, Salak, Razor. Of course, Razor's not a Green Lantern at this point, but we know Razor's been a part of this story, and Kyle Rayner. And they have them all in these construct chains or handcuffs. And then something really interesting happens. We've seen in the past few issues that Kyle's been going through some kind of neurological crisis.
Oh, yeah.
And we even saw the various colors moving through his uniform. So something very unusual has happened here. And when they try to take Kyle prisoner, he lifts his ring in the air and just says stop, and he explodes with white light, and he basically vaporizes all of the uniforms of the UP lanterns. They're all laying on the ground, and he still doesn't know what's happening, but there's a tremendous amount of power emanating from him at this point. So we don't exactly touch on this today. This will be the next episode that we have, but we now know where this is going. And a lot of us have suspected over time that where this is going to end up for Kyle. That is where it ends up, but we'll talk about that next time.
And I do love to see him have that, badass, the power moment is pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, and I've told you, one of my few criticisms of this run has been that I felt like Kyle's story and also Simon's story have come along a little too slowly. But at the same time, I've got to be fair that, Jeremy Adams, he only has so many pages to work with.
Yeah.
So we're finally getting that payoff, and I think it was worth the wait. So I really do like what has gone on with Kyle. I wish it would have happened a little bit, in a more, speedy fashion, but I still like what they've done.
And I'm assuming with Green Lantern Corps coming back, we'll see a lot of him there.
I just like the idea of we can rotate lanterns in and out, and we can tell stories about alien lanterns, and I just love that idea.
As it should be. I mean, the mythology, is so grand, and you have this at your disposal.
Yeah.
Why not use it? You know what I mean? Not many characters can afford that luxury where you can rotate people in and out. Like Flash could, if they wanted, they could tell Jay Garrick, they could tell Barry Allen or Wally West, right? So Flash could.
But with Green Lantern, it's more organic than any other mythos.
Yeah. Whereas
in DC, at least.
Yeah, but those two characters you can do it. Whereas with Batman and Superman, you don't have that luxury. Right? It's either Clark Kent, Bruce Wayne, or you're going to tell a John Kent story, or you're going to tell a Damian Wayne story, or Batman Beyond. So it's more limited than those two other franchises, IPs. So if you have that opportunity, then why not take advantage of it? And I'm glad they are.
Yeah. So it says elsewhere on Oa in the Great Hall, Hal and Simon and Joe Mullane, they are fighting the forces of Lord Tharos, and including the UP lanterns, and it's not going well. They are drastically outnumbered here. My only issue with this, the art looked great. My only issue is that they were so outnumbered. I had to like wonder why they weren't making like greater constructs, like trying to make, big mech suits or cannons or something like that. Like Simon has guns. He makes construct guns. We know Simon has that history with guns.
Yeah.
But I'm like, why not, make some kind of, some kind of minigun or something like that, or make 5 of them and try to fight your way out of this. They are overwhelmed, and Hal has to cut and run because Joe gets shot in the back. Simon gets captured. Lord Tharos is in the middle of all this with this, like, fiendish grin on his face, like, yeah, it's all going according to plan, He
really has that super villain.
He really does. I mean, he's got that classic supervillain, look on his face.
Can you imagine? I don't know why. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it was the mood I'm in. Maybe given recent news, but I got a vibe of I got an image in my head of Tharos and Skeletor hanging out at a bar, just chilling, talking about destroying, universes and
yeah. So again, Hal tries to cut and run to go get some help here, and he's confronted by the Unseeing, who have started to play kind of a greater role in this story.
Now, are these the same ones that we saw from War Journal? Is this the same group?
This is the Unseeing, and we'll see them here in a little while. Could be confronted by Alan Scott, but yes, this is that group that we have seen previously.
Okay.
Yeah, the group that has, that, again, the Unseeing, they have, bandages over their eyes. And so because they are there, the UP Lanterns who are trailing Hal, they catch up to Hal, and at this point, he's greatly outnumbered. He actually thinks he's going to die because they form this, like, serpent construct around him, and they're just taking, turns hitting him in the head.
Yeah.
And so things look bad, and all of a sudden, this great light erupts around them, and who shows up? The cavalry is here. And I mean a one-woman cavalry, and that is Carol Ferris. By the way, this page is awesome, and she's looking at Hal being beaten up, and she's like, let him go, and there's this huge word balloon, and now.
Yeah,
That's my man right there. Get your hands off of him.
Yeah, I love the part when he's like, well, you guys are screwed now.
And she is upset, and she unleashes the power of her ring. By the way, we see that she still has a functioning Star Sapphire ring. At this point, it seems to be the last one of its kind. Yeah. But she lets go with this. She gets Hal, and she's able to transport him away.
Yeah, I mean, I love how they're trying to position Carol now, as the Lone Star Sapphire, and really giving her that air of importance, right?
Right.
It's kind of reminiscent of when Kyle first came on the scene, being the last Green Lantern at the time. I'm getting similar vibes off of Twitter.
Yeah, and I'll say this too. We have seen Carol be heroic in the past as part of the Star Sapphires, but it's always been kind of a forced thing where she was forced into a situation, or it was a reactionary kind of thing. This time, she's choosing to be a hero. She's choosing to be proactive. And she doesn't exactly know how to do that all the time, and we're going to see more of that here in the future.
Yes.
But what she is able to do is transport her and Hal back to his trailer.
I think what I like about that moment is, and as we see in the upcoming issues, but I feel like that entrance, that big, the big run-in in wrestling terms, that you call it, to make the save. That felt like she was fueled off of adrenaline, like in the heat of the moment, seeing Hal in trouble, all that contributed to her big splash entrance, but then, as you see later, as you point out, she really is still adjusting to the hero gig.
Yeah, so and it's going to be an ongoing adjustment, as we're going to see.
Yeah.
But after this, and this really illustrates the personality of Lord Tharos here. after the battle, the fact that Hal was able to escape, he's upset and he's like, you failed. So he makes 3 of his lanterns fight to the death.
Yeah.
And he's like, only one of you is going to get to continue on here. Who's it going to be? The 3 of you, he has some control over the emotional spectrum. And so he is able to, basically make them all into like red lanterns fueled by rage, and at least temporarily make them fight one another.
I don't know about you, but I do not want to work for this guy.
It reminded me of the scene you remember in the Dark Knight?
Yeah, I was going to say with the Joker.
When the Joker, when he threw the pool cue on the floor.
Yeah, he's like, there's no spot, figure it out.
Yeah, there's only one spot here, and that's what Tharo said.
Side note, they had an airing on TV of the Dark Knight trilogy over Christmas, which, yes, I did watch that over Christmas, even though none of them are Christmas movies, but hey, when the Dark Knight trilogy is on TV, you sit and watch it. That's fine. Yeah, so, but, I definitely caught that and was reminded of that scene in the Dark Knight as well. Yeah.
And so the big revelation at the end of the story is actually we see that Amanda Waller and Lord Tharos have been in contact. And they both have plans, and they're kind of it's an uneasy partnership.
Yeah, they don't like each other, that's for sure.
Yeah, they're trying to basically both of them are enacting plans here, and they're trying to stay out of one another's way, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an uneasy alliance, but it's an alliance that nobody, I think, like, if you're on the side of the good guys, that's not a partnership you want to see take root.
Yeah, exactly. And remember, we have the Absolute Power event going on where she has successfully turned the public against superheroes. Yeah, she's waged this campaign of misinformation. And so, like I said, I really like this idea of these two things tying together here.
Yeah. And I think what the key is the way it's done, in the sense that it doesn't overbear the main story being told in Green Lantern, but it does enough to complement it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and we see, and Tharos even says this here. He says, we'll continue to stay out of your sector as long as you don't basically get in our way. And he says, as powerful as you think you are, you're a small speck in the eye of the universe. Let me know when this is finished. So, obviously, there's not the most warm feelings there between the two of them.
Definitely not.
But speaking of warm feelings, when the scene cuts back to Hal Jordan's trailer, we see that Carol finally admits that even though she, at least a part of her, wanted to go with Nathan and wanted to have the quiet life, she's always been in love with Hal. It's a difficult love. It hasn't always been, wine and roses, so to speak, but she has to admit to herself that they have this bond that's unshakable.
Right.
But just as they're talking, we get this big explosion, and
it's at this point that a group of villains led by the Shark capture Hal Jordan for Amanda Waller.
All right, so now we're going to hop onto Green Lantern number 13.
Yeah. So I guess we're going to do a rating all at once at the end.
Yeah, let's talk at the end. So, obviously, it makes sense here. This opens up the island of the nation of Gamora. And Hal Jordan is in these energy cuffs. And if if you like a jacked Hal Jordan, this is the issue for you. Because, man, does he look like he's been loading up on the protein.
Yeah.
Dude is huge.
He's been working out.
And so, I tell you, this scene, Hal is really resourceful in this issue. And one of the things that Amanda Waller says here is that she says, I'm already taking the power from one Green Lantern on Earth. I have no problem taking yours as well. Because, like I said, remember, she is waging this campaign and she is collecting weaponry and powers from superheroes.
Yeah, it's and the Green Lantern in question, I assume, is Alan Scott, right?
Yes, that's what she's referencing here.
At this point, the Shark is wailing on a captive Hal Jordan.
You know what's funny? What made me laugh? When she leaves them, when Amanda leaves Shark to interrogate, let's call it.
Mm-hmm.
How? She's like, remember our deal? No biting his head off.
Right. And Hal.
I was laughing.
Hal's taking a beating, but in true Hal Jordan style, he says, "You hit like a guppy."
Leave it to Hal to just antagonize the guy that's beating on him even more. That's his big solution.
So the scene cuts back to Oa, and we see Jessica Cruz reuniting with Salak and 2-6 and Razor, and again, they're part of this resistance. And I mentioned earlier about the various colors moving through Kyle's uniform. We get a full page splash of that here. This is my favorite image from the book, and not just because it's Kyle Rayner.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious, it is so well drawn and so well colored here.
To see all those colors on one uniform is pretty damn cool.
Yeah, and I think this really gives away Lord Tharos' plan here. It says you control the emotional spectrum, you control the universe. Kyle knows what's going on here. That is kind of Tharos' end game. But remember, Kyle, if you read Green Lantern New Guardians, or at least read some comics from that era, Kyle was once the White Lantern. He had all of the rings at one point and was taught to master each one and combined all of those energies to make him the one singular White Lantern at the time. Yeah. This is after Blackest Night, when we had like the White Lantern Corps. Although there was, at the end of that run, there was another White Lantern Corps, and they've never picked up on that thread. Nobody from DC has. That's for another day. But you can see all of these energies moving through Kyle, and as beautiful as it is, it suggests that it's really kind of making him sick. Like he's kind of, scratching at his neck, and he's kind of all curled up in the corner. So,
I don't mean to belittle or anything. He looks like a struggling addict who's trying to get clean.
Well, I think, and that's a good point. And I think that's the way he's supposed to look. Is that?
That's the first thing I thought.
Yeah. So we get a brief interlude here on New Korugar, and that is Sinestro, who, by the way, at this point is a Red Lantern. He's obviously still very upset over something that happened there, but it's a very quick kind of snapshot in. I do like the art here, especially him, flying away, but we don't get a lot of backstory on what happened here. A lot of what has made Sinestro so upset is explained with the Super Sons storyline that's going on.
Yeah, or that was going on at that point. Yeah.
Right. So we don't get a lot of that here, but for our purposes here, just know that this is not something that Sinestro's come to any kind of catharsis on. He is still full of rage and is very effectively using a Red Lantern ring.
Rage fits him well, though. I think
I've gotten used to this. I think Sinestro's always been an in control character, but everybody can have their buttons pushed.
Sure.
There's always that thing that can, turn you from a reasonable individual to somebody who's lashing out. And we've seen that here with Sinestro.
Again, I'll just reference myself. Have you seen me watching a Leaf game? Because if you have, you'll know that this is very possible.
Yeah. Well, and, we see the remnants of like something horrific that happened on New Korugar here. So it's understandable.
It's destructive, yeah.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me a little bit of the beginning of Emerald Twilight.
Yeah.
When Hal was looking, at the remnants of Coast City, and all of a sudden he's overwhelmed by that kind of emotion. It makes sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of devastation there. Sure.
So now the scene cuts back to Battery Park on Earth, and we see Alan Scott fighting with members of the Justice Society against one of the Amazo robots that Amanda Waller is in control of. This is part of the Absolute Power storyline.
Yeah. By the way, I love seeing the Justice Society together again. I think that's one we have to add to our rotation, just because there's a lot of Green Lantern in it with Alan and also Jade and Obsidian.
And Jade, yeah.
So I think that may be something that as each story arc ends, we'll read it in story arc sort of portions and review it here. But yeah, it was nice to see that. And again, with Zermanico's artwork, oh my God, do they look amazing.
You know, I will say, as far as criticisms go, I don't think their strategy against this, and this turns out to be Jade Stone, by the way, against this Amazo robot was all that effective. Like, they kept running at him, even though they know that his ability is to deplete their powers. So they kept just kind of trying to, instead of like forming some kind of more effective strategy.
You know what it reminded me of when they would individually run at him and then get their butts whooped?
What?
Remember the scene in the very first live action Ninja Turtles movie where they meet Shredder on the rooftop?
Yeah.
And one by one, and I'm like, hello, there's 4 of you. Deal against them. It's 1 by 1 nonsense.
Yeah, exactly. 2 of you get behind him and blindside him, but no, they went one-on-one, I got
as I was reading, I'm like, this is like TMNT 1990 all over again. They just team up on him.
Yeah. But I like the scene here. He's able to deplete Alan's energy from his ring, and Alan instantly draws it back to himself.
Yeah.
So Alan becomes more important in this story, and as Alan's taking them on, he says, Stargirl, run, and he's trying to put distance between them and the Amazo robot.
Anyway, I just want to say it's kind of secondary to the story, but Alan Scott has a badass beard going on, and I dig it.
I like it, yeah. I really do like him with that beard. I think that works.
He's got that I don't know why, but it adds an air of wisdom and heft to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they call him the statesman sometimes, so I think that works with where the character is right now.
Yeah, but I dig it. I think it's a good look for him. I hope he keeps it.
Yeah. So just for everybody out here, it says, to find out where Alan and the others disappeared to, follow Absolute Power Task Force number 3. There's a lot going on here outside of the story.
It was great, by the way.
I have it.
It was a great issue, yeah.
So now we cut back to Las Vegas. And if you don't remember in the last issue...
I can say you don't hear that. But I'm sorry. Elvis...
And
the building just right there. I'm flashing on today.
If you saw or you listened to the episode here on the podcast where we had Jeremy Adams on, I just gushed over how much I love this new character. And here in Las Vegas, we see a very emotional, distraught Nathan Broom pining over Carol. Oh. And we do not know how this happened, but the ring that he had for the wedding starts to smoke, and it turns him into the Sorrow Lantern.
So you're saying he got the smoke?
He brought the smoke.
My thing is, all I'm going to say is, I kind of feel bad for him. Even though
it's understandable, yeah.
But I will say this. We warned them. Remember when they were talking about going to Vegas?
Yeah.
And we both said, as we were going through that, this ain't going to end well for you. Don't do it. And sure enough, he did it. And we were right.
And I love the artwork there. I mean, there is such a power to this image here. First of all, we see the chest symbol. It's like this spiral teardrop.
Yeah, everything. I love the fact that even his costume, the motif of, it looks solid. It looks like
and so
tear.
He has the roses in his hand and they're dying. And there are tears, and they're not like, they don't look like normal tears. They're like gray and goopy, seeping from his eyes. And we've seen, and we'll talk more about that on this podcast. That's part of the character. That's not just him crying in the moment. So I really love this character's design, like the tattered clothing and everything. I mean, this is such a visually,
it's the manifestation of depression. It really is. Like,
exactly, and Jeremy Adams has effectively used that, because that really is a powerful emotion.
Yeah. I know it well from countless round one playoff exits by the Leafs. I know the emotion well. It's a miracle I haven't become sorrow in real life. Given that fact, but it's a very effective design. Now, I just want to confirm, Donnie, that you're basically telling me, without telling me, that you would buy a figure of this if my father made one.
I would not buy a figure. I'd buy like 3 or 4.
Oh, sorry.
But yeah, I mean, I want this in figure form so bad. I can't even tell you.
Donnie wants a figure of this. Without telling me Donnie wants a figure of this, it's right here on this podcast. Everybody make some memes of that moment. Go ahead. You can clip you can screen grab, clip it, and make memes.
But I will say this, and just an aside here, Todd Father has been knocking it out of the park with the figures in the last year or so.
Yeah.
Nothing's off limits. By the way, we've got a Guy Gardner coming in the next couple of months, and I'm so excited about that.
Yeah, and he's doing by the way, based on just the social media, he is going to be doing a Superman movie line, so we'll probably get a movie Guy Gardner as well.
Yes. Oh, man, I'm really excited about that. Okay, so the scene cuts back to Oa, and here's more of the motivation for Lord Tharos. He says, "My name is Lord Tharos, and I'm going to save the universe." How many villains think if they can just amass enough power and make things the way they think it should be, then everything's going to be okay. Our reality has been a haven of disorder and chaos from the beginning of time. And so this is why he's trying to amass so much control.
Well, that part of the speech is not incorrect. I mean, he's not wrong there.
So, yeah, well, it's kind of like, Sinestro's motivation classically. He thinks he can do things better than the Guardians. And certainly the Guardians have screwed up a lot.
Oh, yeah.
But, when you go about, things in like a fascist manner and you don't tolerate, you don't tolerate any dissension and you continue to amass power, that always ends up in a bad place. So
genocide is typically not the right way to go about things. Just thought I'd point that out. I may sympathize with the villain's reasoning. It's the way they go about executing their vision is typically the problem.
At this point, the Shark continues to torture Hal Jordan with the power cuffs, but Hal Jordan isn't as far gone as the Shark believes. The overconfident Shark is knocked cold when Hal Jordan rises up and headbutts him.
And so he's able, through sheer force of will, which obviously is very fitting for Hal Jordan, pull himself out of the power cuffs, and he runs down the hall and he sees his Green Lantern ring. But it's out of energy.
That's not helpful.
So we see that Amanda Waller has, we actually don't, I should clarify here, we don't see that it's out of energy in this issue. We see that Amanda Waller has amassed a lot of weapons from superpowered beings. Like we see, Javelin's javelin here. We see Harley Quinn's, the enormous hammer. And so that's how this part of the story ends.
That's where we get, is it next issue or this issue? Common King, is that the next issue?
That is next issue.
Okay,
Before we get there, though, there is a backup story here that lends itself to what's going on in this story. We see, it's called The Patient Blade. And we see that Lord Tharos, as a kid, was attacked by another Durlan pretending to be his father.
Yeah.
And that this Durlan actually killed his father. Tharos was able to get away, but he's kind of spent his life looking for this Durlan, wanting to take revenge.
Yeah. It was, I will say, I did feel sorry for him during this backup thing.
Mm-hmm.
Backup story. But again, by the same token, after the fact, he's taken, all the sympathy I had for him, and then based on his actions, twisted it to the point where I lose that sympathy. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so it's again great talent by from the story in its ability to, at least in the early stages, make me sympathize with him. But then seeing how that memory is the driving force for what he's doing now, it also reminds you that, okay, but remember, he's the villain, you're not supposed to sympathize with him.
Right. Well, and so we see that, Tharos, he's constantly kind of seeing the Durlan who killed his father in these other people.
He needs counsel, is what he needs.
Yes. And so, like, one of the things he does is, he has a prisoner here, he throws him a knife and is like, either you use that to kill yourself, or I'm going to do stuff to you. You're going to wish that you had used that knife to kill yourself, which is, that's dark. And interestingly enough here, I like how this ends with Lantern de Proba. We see that he comes in and he's like, we've had a lot of people committing suicide lately. What's going on here, buddy? And so, we start to see that not only a lot of the Lanterns who are serving Tharos, but also eventually the other Durlans look at Tharos and they're like, they start to like not trust everything that's going on. You can see the cracks in this plan.
Yeah, they're starting to see the problem with him.
Yeah.
He's starting to show his true colors.
Yeah. Kind of like Kyle.
Yeah, but not exactly the same. Not as many colors.
So this is the part of the episode where Adam sings True Colors by Cyndi Lauper.
Oh, yeah, I think I'm going to pass on that one just because I think I've scared enough people off with my small rendition of Viva Las Vegas. So,
So let's hop on to Green Lantern number 14. This is an Absolute Power tie-in. Says so on the cover. Really like this cover with Hal Jordan too, by the way. Not the most Green Lantern thing, but the fact that he's in
stealing from Batman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. And with the spray painted symbol here.
Facing his tech like he's a member of the NWO with a spray paint. What's going on? Something tells me Batman's not going to be too happy when he realizes his tech was taken.
Yeah. Okay, so we're back on the scene with Hal Jordan, who is on Gamora Island. He is trying to escape, and he's able to. Again, his ring is out of power here. That's how we see it. That he does not have power in his ring. However, he is surrounded by a bunch of weaponry. So he is jumping these henchmen of Amanda Waller and making his way through this facility in an effort to try to get out.
He does do a good job of making his way through that facility.
This is a really fun episode. This is a really fun. Well, it is a fun episode because of this issue. Yeah. And these issues. You talked about Condiment King. Hal is trying to make use of whatever weaponry he comes across, and one of the first things he comes across is the weapon of the mustard and ketchup guns.
They wanted a hamburger as I was reading this issue. I just want to point that out.
That's understandable. You know what? it really speaks to how resourceful Hal Jordan is here. The fact that that he's knowledgeable enough with each one of these weapons to use them, even though this is not what he usually uses in a battle.
He's been around a long enough time. He's faced a lot of these villains that he sort of kept a mental catalog, sort of how to use these weapons. But also, again, I think what him making his way through this gauntlet of in the warehouse of adversaries, I think showcases that a Green Lantern, if they're truly good and worthy of their position, are just as good without the ring as they are with it.
Right. Well, remember on Green Lantern, the animated series, when he told Razor and Kilowog, when they were depowered in that one episode, he's like, we're not lanterns because of the rings. We're lanterns because of these, talking about the heart. Yeah. We can see plenty of heart here. But I really like the scene where one of the henchmen grabs Blue Devil's trident.
Yeah.
And he tries to wrest it away from Hal, and Hal pushes the button on the side, and the guy flies up in the air. Yeah. It was just a really fun scene to see Hal fighting these henchmen in this kind of whimsical way. So I approve.
Yeah, I mean, I do too. It was a lot of fun.
However, then Jade Stone shows up. Now, Jade Stone's on the scene. He has been having a conversation with Alan Scott. Alan Scott is trying to convince Jade Stone.
Which I love, by the way. Yeah.
A lot of people are liking Jade Stone. What's happened with Jade Stone is that because he temporarily had the power of the Starheart in him, he has now gained a sentience. And so he's not just an android anymore. However, at this point, because Hal Jordan is making such a ruckus, he goes to see what's going on here, and it's Hal Jordan without his ring against this Amazo robot. So if this ends up going into a hand-to-hand situation, Hal is up the creek, and you know what creek I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's the brown one.
Yeah,
Brown Creek. But yeah, no, I do love that just the back story of the way that Alan is trying to defeat or subdue this Amazo robot is by putting doubt in its mind about its objective.
Yeah, it reminded me of the episode of What If. Yeah. Where we learned that there's a version of Thanos who was talked out of his plan by T'Challa.
It's like the Terminator franchise, right? Where eventually Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator ends up helping John Connor, right? Doing the right thing. Right. So it's got that vibe.
So he says, I know now why you cry.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe Arnold Schwarzenegger will voice an Amazo in James Gunn's DCU. It wouldn't shock me, I'll tell you that much. But no, I do like that story. But the first thing is, hey, let's get a bunch of us and punch our way through these Amazos.
Yeah.
But then you have Alan Scott, who's got, again, the wisdom behind him to say, let me see if I can rework this being's programming by simply posing questions to it and sort of, so again, it's not always about, what construct is coming out of the ring. It's to be a good Green Lantern, you have to be, it's about your heart and your sort of, your drive and your willpower, but also your smarts and being able to use your smarts. So, we're getting both ends of the spectrum here.
Yeah. And the entire spectrum.
Yeah, not just the emotional.
Anyway. Yeah. So the scene cuts to the Tower of Fate, and remember how we talked earlier about Carol Ferris playing a greater role here. Yeah. We see her with the Justice Society, and this is the first time, we've seen her with a group that, the Green Lantern Corps, they're like brothers, don't get me wrong. And, with the Justice League, they're also, at least some of them are very close in their relationships. But this is kind of like a family here. She's sitting down. It's kind of like a family dinner And so she's really, going through some emotions herself about being a part of this and learning how to be a hero, including with, some of the younger heroes here too.
Right.
And this is a key point. The reason why she's so important here is she is somebody who has flown under Amanda Waller's radar.
Yeah.
Even though she's been a Star Sapphire in the past, she's not well known within like the metahuman community.
Yeah, right. So there's that surprise if she gets involved in the fray.
And so she's going to be a key role in kind of fighting back against the plans of Amanda Waller. So the scene cuts back to the Great Hall on Oa. Remember I talked earlier about some of the other Durlans starting to question the paranoia of Lord Tharos and his willingness, how far he's willing to go.
Yeah.
And we see that they're questioning him. And I really like some of the expressions that are drawn. You can tell that they are, in a way, they're like, okay, we're getting more and more disturbed by some of the things this guy is saying and doing.
The imagery in those scenes that you're talking about reminded me of Star Wars in the sense that, when the Senate gets together and they confer, it has that sort of vibe to it, right?
Yeah.
Visually.
Okay, so we cut back to the scene where Hal is fighting against Jadestone, and obviously he has absolutely no chance. No matter what he tries to do, he tries to run, he tries to punch him, nothing's going to happen.
He's certainly out of his element, for sure.
Yeah, he's completely overmatched. However, Jadestone knocks him down, and Hal lucks out. He lucks into Abracadabra's wand. And just as he's wishing, man, I wish Batman was here, I wish Superman was here to help me out, he wields the wand, which takes him away. And because he was thinking about Batman and Superman, it takes him to where Cal and Bruce are.
Along with Wonder Woman there,
along with some of the weaponry. Yeah,
was it Themyscira?
Yeah, he ends up in Themyscira, and there's one. You can see Wonder Woman and Batman and Superman, and some of the weaponry kind of went along with him.
I take offense to this issue on the basis of false advertising, because I do have wish to go to Themyscira.
That's for different reasons, though, man.
That's besides the point.
So the scene cuts to Hub City, and we see that Carol, through the magic of Dr. Fate, she steps out of the tower. And once she does that, though, she then alerts Nathan, because once she's out of the protection of the tower, his ring, and again, we don't know a lot about it yet, it seems to function in kind of a negative mirror way of a Star Sapphire ring. Remember, a Star Sapphire ring takes the the wearer to their true love.
Yes.
This seems to be some kind of like a homing beacon of depression.
This ring will take you to your ex.
Exactly.
Or if I had access to the ring, it'd make me relive all the Game 7 losses in succession. Which wouldn't be fun for anybody.
No.
What I found interesting about this is that I liked seeing her interact. This is when she meets up with Dawn, right?
So what now?
This is the part of the book as well where she teams up with Dawn to save those.
That's in the next issue.
Okay, it's the next issue. I'll say that then.
Yeah. Now we move on to Green Lantern number 15, another Absolute Power tie-in. And if you are a fan of Green Lantern and Flash team-ups, you should like this book because we see Hal teaming up with Wally West.
Yeah. Now, which Wally? See, again.
Huh?
At first, I'm like, the art gave away which Wally West, but when you say Wally West, there's Wally and there's Wallace, and it's like, because now remember the new 52 version has been ported over, carried over, so it's like,
So, but this is Wally, and we see that they go to an island, and that Hal and Batman have been working on a version of the Batwing that is supposed to be like the fastest ever.
Right.
But they can't keep it from exploding because when it goes too fast, it explodes. Now, in the past, Hal's worn his ring, which I'm assuming that he did that just out of a safety measure because he doesn't like to use his ring when he flies jets. But in the past, it's exploded, but he's survived. Now, this time he's going to use it, again, without a powered ring. So this is obviously a very treacherous type of situation.
Yeah. This could be.
So Wally uses one of the cycles here, and he and Hal set off to
the Hall of Justice, yeah,
going to the Hall of Justice. So they set off for the Hall of Justice. Now, Dove is in the middle of a situation where she is trying to save a child, but she's surrounded by this angry mob who have been poisoned by the smear campaign of Amanda Waller. Carol shows up and tries to help her. By the way, I really like the way the Star Sapphire costume is drawn here.
Yeah, and the color and just
the color, the design, everything is great. Even the tiara on her head, just great. However, she shows up, and all of a sudden, Dove goes through this like shift in her emotions. She's really happy to see Carol, and then all of a sudden she's like, "No, I can't go to the Tower of Fate. Everything's just hopeless."
Yeah, and
a really nice color touch here too. You see her word balloons go from white to completely gray in a couple over the course of a couple different panels. Guess why that is? We see the Sorrow Lantern show up.
Yeah.
And like I said, I've always wanted to see a character be able to wield the emotion of depression, something negative, as a weapon.
That's a powerful weapon.
Yes, exactly. And we see that here. And by the way, the art, when Carol looks up and she's like, "Nate?" Because she sees what he's become.
Yeah.
And so I really like that moment here. So Hal Jordan arrives at the Hall of Justice. He drops a Batmobile.
Yeah, he ejects because he knows he's going to eject out of the.
Right. Well, he
knows the plane's going to start crashing out, so he ejects the Batmobile as the failsafe.
Well, and when he does that as a failsafe because Batman doesn't have any like typical weaponry on board because he doesn't like to use.
Basically, he uses the Batmobile to ram through the building to get in the building.
Yeah, so he just releases. He says activate Batmobile release, and so it just crashes into the building and creates chaos here. And so Wally is able to download the plans. That's what he was after. Yes. Wally was able to download the plans because Hal was able to create a distraction.
Right. Yes.
However, a very familiar Green Lantern villain shows up here. A mind-controlled version of holy crud, Major Force.
He's not good. He's not good to deal with on a regular day.
Yeah.
Now, a mind-controlled version of him, that's even worse.
Yes. And we see that Hal, who is still in the Batwing, tries to get away. But he's not able to outrun Major Force. Remember, he can't go too fast. He can't punch it for all it's worth or the plane will explode.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, we get an exchange between Carol and Nate. And we see that she is able to vanquish him at least temporarily by saying, I love him, and like stretching out with her emotions. I sound like Master Yoda here, stretching out with her emotion of love for Hal Jordan. Although she expresses sorrow here over what she's done to Nate.
Yeah, she didn't want to hurt him. But again, you can make the case that if deep down you knew you loved Hal, getting married just to try and mask that feeling is not necessarily the best course of action.
Yeah. And I really like the idea of he talks about and I say he, the Sorrow Lantern talks about Nate as if he's some person who no longer exists.
It's like two different identities.
Right. It's like, yeah, it's like,
personality disorder kind of deal.
Yeah, it's like, the Hulk or Venom when they take, when they take over the body of the host.
Right.
And he says something really ominous here. He says, "I will never feel love again, and after I'm done, you won't either."
Gee, I wonder if he's going after Hal Jordan.
Yeah, exactly. But there's something very profound in that. If you go through something that is very depressing, especially when it comes to a relationship like that, a love relationship, if that ends, you do feel like a different person.
Sure.
Not completely. And again, this is kind of playing that to the hilt, but that is going to change you.
Yeah,
you're not going to be the same person that you were before the breakup. This is taking that to obviously, a superhero degree.
Exaggerated version of it. Yeah.
Exactly. But there's a lot to be said here.
Sure.
So Hal is about to be killed by Major Force. He ejects because he's over that mountain where the power source is, and so he hopes that he's going to be able to charge his ring before he hits the ground, but it looks like that's not going to work. And so it looks like he's almost ready to die, and he's making his peace with it.
He's like, well, this is the end.
And right before he hits the ground, up shows Jadestone, who has been changed by Alan Scott, who has, because he had the Star Heart, Alan Scott has started to convince him to see that there's more than just his programming, because now he has sentience.
And again, it's so nice to see a scenario where a person was talked into changing their ways as opposed to doing it with brute force. I mean, don't get me wrong, the fight scenes, the action scenes are great and fun to look at. But it's also nice to have that balance of you can talk down a villain and, reason with him in certain degrees, in certain instances. And this is one of those cases, and I like seeing that.
So Carol shows up, and there's a very emotional reunion here. They share a really passionate kiss. They fly off together, and what I really like is that Jadestone is left guarding the battery with this sword that is like 10 times too big for him.
Yeah.
You see there, it's so comical, but I like it. He's like, speak softly and carry a big sword.
This is true.
So we get the backup story here, involves John Stewart, and this happens after the final issue of Green Lantern War Journal. What did you think about this story?
I like that we're starting to that's starting to catch up to where we are.
Yeah.
And also, we're seeing the fact that Ellie, or is it Ella? Ellie?
No, it's Ellie Rose. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that she's starting to become sort of her own entity as opposed to just a piece of John.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like, how Pinocchio became a real boy, she's kind of becoming a real girl kind of thing. But also what I liked about it was just the conversation John Stewart and John Henry were having about like John getting advice about what's it like to work with family. Like, how can you do it without constantly worrying about, work with them in the superhero context, not in.
Yeah, I mean, he's fighting here with Ellie Rose, but remember, he's done plenty of team ups in the past, fought as a group, but never with somebody who at least feels like a sister to him. Right.
So he's struggling with the fact of how do you do it and not constantly worry about losing them or them being in danger. And I still love the idea that he was able to put his mom's consciousness into the ring. That is such a sweet concept, concept, that he always has his mom's voice literally there with him. I think that's a wonderful thing.
And in the future, that's going to make for possibly a really dramatic moment if he ever loses that ring.
Yeah.
If he ever loses his connection to his mother.
To me, like, as someone who watched their grandmother battle dementia, if I had that capability to put her voice into like a ring or a device that I could constantly have it in the background, to make sure I'm doing the right thing, to get advice from, and that'd be a really amazing thing to have. So it's really cool to see John have that. But so, like I said, I like this issue because
I also need to point out before we wrap things up here, if you haven't been reading Green Lantern War Journal, if you're only reading the main title, John has the Dark Star Ring. That's very important. That was a huge part of that story. He's in possession of the Dark Star Ring, and that's going to lead right into Civil Corps. It's going to play a very important part.
Yeah, what I especially liked about this issue was just that conversation with John and John Henry, because it's very rare that we see John Stewart go to, like, in search of advice of how to handle the situation. He's pretty much in control, composed. So to see him kind of out of his element is kind of interesting.
That was a really good backup story.
Yeah.
Of course, it was Phil Kennedy Johnson. He obviously he knows his craft, but he made a couple of really effective points there in just a few pages.
Yeah. And I have to say, just because I have to do it, we know Dove was in this issue, right? And seeing Dove, of course, brought up memories of the Titans show, which I quite liked. I know some people didn't like it. I liked it. But it reminded me of Minka Kelly, who played Dove in the show. And I'd just like to remind everybody that just because we're in a new year, the classics don't stop. And Minka Kelly is on the list. So that's for Nick and Chris, who are wondering how long into the new year it will take for me to get the pen clicking. Well, there's your answer.
As soon as you said, it reminded me of Dove. I was like, yeah, he's going to start talking about how much he likes that actress. I knew it.
I'm nothing if not consistent. Come on.
Yeah. Okay, so we get on to Green Lantern Civil Corps, and it opens up with John flying along with Ellie Rose, who in this version, like in the previous issue, she looked more human. In this one, she's all green like a construct, so I'm not exactly sure why that is.
Just at a certain speed,
different artistic choice, I guess.
Yeah, or that, yeah.
And then all of a sudden, John is attacked by yellow energy. And remember, many episodes ago, I said that I think there's a chance that Kilowog fell into the yellow battery and he's infected with yellow energy. Lo and behold, that's what's happened here.
You were right. So, pat on the back to you, sir.
Like Barry Horowitz, yeah.
Yeah, well done.
But he's not a Yellow Lantern. I do want to point this out because he still has the Green Lantern symbol on his chest, but he is infected with yellow energy, and this is going to play a major role coming up here shortly. I do have one issue with the art here, and people are going to roll their eyes, but I don't like the way Kilowog's hands were drawn here. They're too small. It looks weird. I just wanted to say that.
I didn't notice that, but now that you mentioned, maybe I. Yeah.
Although they look better in the panel where he like stretches out his hand. So
but I do like his the overall look of his fur. Like that appearance was quite shocking, quite striking, and so he looks really
very intimidating,
disturbing and badass. Yeah.
And he's able to pull the Dark Star ring off of John, which to me was a little too convenient for the way it went. But at the same time, John was surprised, and he probably didn't have a natural reaction of fighting back against one of his friends.
He didn't figure, because he was out of the loop. He was so shocked that he wasn't, on his game.
Mm-hmm.
John is rendered unconscious, and he wakes up 12 hours later in the new Green Lantern wing of the Justice League Watchtower.
Side note, I want to visit this new watchtower because there's so many rooms. Like, I just want to go hang out there for a day. Like, can somebody make that happen?
We don't see a lot of it. I mean, we see them kind of, you know, they're
Justice League. You'll see more of it.
Yeah, they're having lunch with one another, and they're talking. And Carol is there, by the way, and she suits up and says, "I guess I'm a superhero now."
You know what's funny is two things. That particular moment did remind me of the Ryan Reynolds film where he suits up for Tom in that scene. Yeah. But also, I just really love in this issue. The scene that I really loved the most was just the all the lanterns together. I mean, Kyle was there, but the rest of them were there, and just having a conversation to catch up. You know, like to bring everybody up to speed. You know, like I love that.
Yeah. And one of the things that we have here too, Jadestone is here, and we see that Jadestone gives a new ring to Guy Gardner, because remember, the one that he would have had would have been connected to the old battery.
Yeah.
The one that he gets here is connected to the new battery that we saw on Earth. I'm a little unclear about John's ring. I guess John still has his own ring, and he's in control of that, I guess. But remember, Hal has a new ring that he got from Tom Kalmaku. Now Guy has a similar ring. Shepard, remember, his ring's from another universe, so he doesn't need a new ring because it's not connected to the battery that is controlled by the Source Lantern that's controlled by Lord Tharos.
Good point,
Yeah. So... And as always, it never gets old for me to see a page where they all say the oath together. And I love this image here of Guy and Hal and John raising their hands together and reciting the Green Lantern's oath.
That's a really cool spot.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So we cut to the Chamber of the Unseeing, and we see that they are talking to one another, including having this big Green Lantern symbol in the middle. And this is a really interesting thing here too. They say that the blockade is secure.
Okay.
And it says one of them senses that Hal Jordan and the others are trying to move past the blockade. And so they want to make a move to intercept what Hal and the other Lanterns are doing. However, somebody else shows up, and he's on the side of Hal Jordan. And he says, and I love the way he's drawn here, "I am Alan Scott, and I'm what you call a major distraction." And I'm with you. I just love the beard. Like, I've gotten so used to that now. It's kind of like...
powerful, so, like... I guess wise is like it's like he shows up and it's like, okay, everything's gonna be okay, like it's like you're covering, like, that's the thing, like when I see the JSA members, it's kind of like, even though the Justice League is the team that drew me in, right, when I first started reading, the JSA feels like it's like comfort food, you know what I mean? It's like classic, you know what I mean? And so, every time I see Alan, it's that warm feeling about, everything's going to be okay here. We're good.
Mm. So Hal and his group, they are going to go to Thanagar and try to convince them what has happened with Tharos and the Durlans that he has used to replace the United Planets Council. But this is a trap. It's a very similar trap that we saw before. And so Tharos shows up, and they nearly fall into this trap. But interestingly enough, Carol shoots one of the council members, and when she shoots him, he transforms back into his Durlan form, which I thought was just kind of a stroke of genius there for somebody she thought very quickly on her feet for somebody who's not used to being a superhero.
Yeah, she's picking it up pretty good.
Also, and this has nothing to do with the story, but there is a page in the middle of this issue where they show the McFarlane Toys statues for Flash and Superman and Wonder Woman. And these are the digital statues, and goodness gracious, these are awesome.
Yeah.
So if you're a fan of any one of those characters, and oh man. So I'm getting the Green Lantern, the Jon Stewart one that's coming next year. So that's already on pre-order.
Nice.
So
is it just a digital piece? How's it work? I still don't get how that works, but
there's a digital feature with it. There's a digital aspect that comes with it, but it's a physical statue.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay.
So Tharos has been given the Dark Star Ring by Kilowog, and so he unleashes this on the Green Lanterns. And of course, he's controlling like the Radiant Dead within this.
Right. So this is where the events of War Journal really start to impact the main.
Yes. And so we cut back.
Just a side note, I like that just because. Don't get me wrong. Like I like that both Hal and John are strong enough as characters to have their own separate adventures. Yes. But it feels so long since the last Green Lantern crossover that I'm glad this is happening, and I'm ready for another Green Lantern crossover.
Mm-hmm. Oh, of course, I'm always ready for something like that. And if you are a fan of the golden age of Green Lantern, and I don't mean the Alan Scott golden age, I mean volume 4.
From basically old 4 or
yes.
old 5 to whatever the hell the new 52 started.
Yeah. So down in the Science Cell prison, Shepard is down there, and he hatches this plan to unleash Larfleeze, who helps them in this.
If we're at the point where we're desperate that we're releasing that numbskull, we got problems.
Well, the thing about Larfleeze is that he kind of evolved over time into more of a comedic character, but he could be somebody, he could be a force to reckon with.
Yeah, he could be a threat when.
And I really like the art here, and also what he has to say. He's like, "Where is my light? Where is my special?"
So you're making him sound like Gollum. Is basically the voice.
My shiny. Where's my shiny?
Why do I have a feeling now that Andy Serkis is going to get cast as Larfleeze in the DCU?
Yeah. So again, Tharos continues to fight all of the Green Lanterns with the Radiant Dead that he's unleashed from the Dark Star Ring.
Yeah.
Also, an interesting, and I don't think we've gotten an answer to this yet. Some of the Radiant Dead say the light is singing. And I'm like, the light is singing. So it's making a noise of some sort. Is that signifying some kind of corruption?
That's a good way to look at it, and it makes sense.
So
there will be there. That's a good point. Could be.
So the Durlans with which Tharos has been working decide that this is just too much, and so they call the Star Shroud, aka Varen, to confront Lord Tharos, and he seemingly kills him. Now, that's not the end. We'll get to that in just a minute.
Yeah, there's a special.
But now, Carol and John and Hal are confronted by Star Shroud. And I like Jon Stewart's line here. He was like, he goes, don't hold back. Don't worry about killing him. He's already dead, but he just won't stay that way.
Yeah, and again, I think it's cool because like before, we kind of had John being brought up to speed, right? Mm-hmm. And now it's Hal's turn, like Hal and everybody else's turn to get brought up to speed.
Yeah. So Lord Tharos, as he lays dying and the life is draining from his body, he says, "I am undone. But if I am to die, then let my rage have its revenge." So energy bursts out of his eyes, and we see that what he's done is brought Mogo, who is under control of Red Lantern energy, to the planet. And boy, is that a scary thought.
That's angry.
Yeah, a planet that's angry, an entire planet that's angry.
She got some issues.
I think that would be pretty scary if an entire planet was angry at you.
I think that's when I moved to Mars. Like if the Earth is
Yeah, you can hang out with John Jones there.
Have some cookies. So no, that sounds like a good idea.
My kid and I watched Comfort and Joy, the Justice League episode on Christmas Eve. I love that episode. I think that's my favorite episode of the whole thing.
I had similar ideas. We just chose different episodes. You did Comfort and Joy. I did Christmas with the Joker, Holiday Nights, and then the He-Man and She-Ra Christmas special episode.
Oh, that's another great one.
That was my Christmas Eve. Yeah.
Now, my favorite moment, of course, from that series was when John relit the power battery. That was in episode 3, I believe.
And also just watching Superman get excited about opening presents.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that he's like a big kid.
Yeah.
You know?
I like that he tries to look through it and he's like lead, and you see that his parents have like lined all of his presents with lead.
And she's like, how many times as a kid did you use your powers to peek at your presents? But then also, it just brings to mind that if I would recommend listening to the latest episode we posted, which was the Christmas episode, where Anthony Caruso and I reviewed Batman Santa Claus Silent Night. It's the first volume, and it's great. And I just want to highlight one moment, and that is the moment where Superman realizes that Batman knows Santa Claus.
Yeah.
His reaction is glorious, and if James Gunn intends to do a Christmas special set in the live-action Christmas special set in the DC universe the way he did Guardians of the Galaxy, I hope that he does Silent Night because I think it's brilliant and it's perfect for it.
Yeah. Also, just my 2 cents worth, I also want to see Green Christmas, which was written by Ron Mars, and also the Larfleeze Christmas special. But that's just me. Anyway, so
I think that would be fun as well, yeah.
So now we're going to jump on to Green Lantern number 16, and this picks up after Civil War, and we see that now the battle is raging against Mogo, and they're trying to evacuate. It's Thanagar, right? That they're trying to evacuate? Yeah. And it's not going well. Mogo destroys most of Thanagar.
Oh, boy.
And I think it said even here that it was like only like 1,000 of them survived out of the entire planet.
Yeah, that's gonna upset Hawkman and Hawkgirl. That guy.
Now we see on the Durlan flagship Himota. We haven't talked for a while about Kelly Quintella, and we see her talking to Ellie Rose here, and somehow the gauntlet is going to come into play. We still don't know a lot about the gauntlet. We got the backstory about how she got the gauntlet. It was in a junkyard in Bolivia, but she just kind of put it on after the Green Lantern, who we still don't know if that was an actual Green Lantern, was murdered. She put the gauntlet on and started using it. But it seems like Jeremy Adams has a plan here for the future of the gauntlet.
And certainly Kelly as well. And I like that they brought her back and they're still using her. And they're giving her some power and agency as well. You know what I mean? She's not just a character for the other Green Lanterns to babysit. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And that's always been my issue with her, is that I didn't really know who she was as a character. Now, Jeff Thorne started to develop her some. Yes. And I really like the interplay between her and Simon Baz in his run. Yeah. But we haven't seen a lot of development since then. So it looks like Jeremy Adams has a plan.
She's been in a coma, relatively speaking, so it's kind of hard to have character development when you're,
Well, that's fair, but at some point, she's got to wake up and do stuff. So
for sure, definitely, yeah.
Speaking of, I really like this moment, and I've got to compliment Jeremy Adams on it when I speak to him. So the ship that Carol is on, the Iranian ship, is damaged, and she goes to repair it with her ring. But remember, this is an alien craft, so she doesn't exactly know it the way she would one of her own aircrafts. She uses her ring to map the craft and then beams it into her brain so she'll know how it works so she can repair it. This is why I like Green Lantern so much. It's problem solving like this that moves the narrative along that you really don't see in other comics. I really like that moment that she beams it into her own mind. She maps it so she knows what to do.
I agree.
And you see that Hal Jordan sees what's going on too, and he's like, that energy, atta girl. He's like, that's my lady right there.
Yeah, he's a beaming, proud boyfriend. Right?
So now John and Hal are still fighting Star Shroud, and just as she activates the craft, they throw him in front of the thruster, and he's seemingly killed, but probably not, because he's been killed several times and he keeps coming back.
Yeah. Yeah, my vote is definitely not killed. Yeah.
So a bunch of UP Lanterns then show up. They're trailing the battle, and they start to fight with Hal and John. Hal and John actually do very well. I really like the constructs here. John looks like it looks like some kind of like battle vehicle. Hal, he forms some kind of car, and they kind of smash their way through the UP Lanterns, and I really like that.
It kind of looked like almost not exactly, but the supernatural car.
Yeah.
Can't have that. But again, I like that it was a big construct and big for the situation. You know what I mean? It was very creative, and it was a striking visual.
Yeah. So, interestingly enough, number one, Star Shroud, again, not dead, shows back up. Also, Lord Tharos. It says here, Tharos is being reborn, and we see that his eyes are completely black and energy's kind of spilling out of them.
Yeah,
and so, like...
Another... It kind of picks up from remember I said when we did War Journal, I talked about like the horror-esque images. Mm-hmm. That has a similar vibe. It carries over from that kind of.
So obviously Tharos is being inhabited by some being, and we'll get to that again later on as well. We don't want to give too much away on this episode.
Sure.
However, speaking of horror imagery, a being that we have not seen for almost 10 years, at least to my recollection, the Predator. And I'm not talking about the Yautja. I'm talking about the entity that inhabits the Star Sapphire battery.
Mm.
The Predator shows up outside of the craft. And we see the continuation of that. The Predator has always been really interesting to me. Mm. The being that's supposed to be the embodiment of love looks like a jacked up version of one of the xenomorphs in Aliens.
Yeah. That's certainly a contrast of it's a dichotomy, that's for sure.
Yeah. And so that's where this story ends, and we don't really get a backup at all, although we get a story. This was really interesting. I like what DC did here. Obviously, as a wrestling fan, they gave us this backup about Will Ospreay.
Yeah, the AEW and the AEW tie-in stories. Those are cool.
I like Ospreay, by the way. So anyway,
he's very
has nothing to do with Green Lantern. I just wanted to point that out.
It's very good though. But yeah, no, it's like I said, I just love that the two main storylines that have been occupying the Green Lantern mythos for this past year or so.
Yeah,
are finally starting to converge, and it feels like a big event, and brings, like you were saying earlier, brings things back to the kind of the golden age, not the actual golden age, but the golden age of recent Green Lantern publishing.
Well, and I've seen some fans say they think that this run is too much like the Johns run. I don't believe that at all. I think it has some of the same impact of putting Hal back into a place where he doesn't seem like he's just in the middle of a big story, that he's only part of that. But he's developed Hal very well. He's developed Carol very well. Now we're seeing him work on John Stewart. In addition to that, also created a couple of really interesting villains for this run.
I don't see it as being a sort of copy or a similarity.
No.
To me, the similarity is how excited it's getting me for the book again.
Yeah.
And how good it's been. Right? And the fact that it feels like a big event, which is back in the John's era, when you picked up a Green Lantern book, it felt like a big event book. Like it felt like it's a big deal. In terms of the DC universe, it felt like a big deal, and we're getting that again, which is that's. But in terms of story line details, they're not the same. But the feeling of this epic, grand storytelling, that's what is similar.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on these issues?
Again, I think it's. You mean in terms of rating or just
in terms of a rating? Yeah.
In terms of rating, this is going to sound like a homer, but I'm not a Homer Simpson. Homer.
No.
I think it's like, for me, the writing is a 5 and the art's a 5. I rereading these last night to prepare for this show, and reading them in succession, whereas you normally have to wait a month in between each issue. It just felt very, very big, very grand scale, but also very character driven and focused. Like when
kind of the best of both worlds in some ways. Yeah.
So when they wanted to focus on, be it Hal, who had the predominant amount of moments, but Hal, or Alan Scott, when he made his appearances, there was a focus on him. Kyle Rayner had the spotlight on him a couple of times. But depending on who the Green Lantern in focus was, they really got, like, you really felt a personal connection to what they were going through. At the same time, there's all this epic space opera stuff going on that envelopes it. So I think you do get the best of both worlds. It's this big, it feels like an event storyline, but also very personal as well. Mm-hmm. And so, 5 and 5 for story and art for me.
Oh gosh, I went back and forth on 4.5 and 5 for story. Like I said, I only have a couple of little minor criticisms, so I'm going to say 4.5 and 4.5. There's a couple points with different artists here. There was a couple of points, like I said, with the way Kilowog was drawn.
No, I see your points with Kilowog's hands, like nothing.
Yeah, there were.
But like it just wasn't enough to take away from me.
But I mean, like I said, I'm very happy with the direction that this book is headed. And I love all the covers here. And by the way, I keep picking up all the variant covers because they're gorgeous. Yeah, and like I said, I like where this has started, and I like where we're going to now. It's been an organic progression of Hal Jordan kind of rebooting, and now back with the core in a really unique way, with kind of the humans being the center of things and kind of restarting the core, because we still have the UP Lanterns after them. So yeah, I still think there's plenty of story to go, and I know some fans have said that they don't think it's moved along quickly enough. And to that I say, Jeremy Adams, he only has a finite number of pages to work with, and there's also been a bunch of backup stories.
Right, yeah.
And so I think he's brought things along as quickly as he can to make the points he wants to make.
But again, when you're reading monthlies, I mean, that's part of the gig. Is they have to stretch it out, right? To make you come back every month. Whereas if they wrap this up in a nice tight little bowl, then where are we going next, right? So, but also to come out of that, I would say if you want to get an immersive, really all-in-one experience, do like exactly what I did last night, is reread them all in a sitting, and you get that, what some people want, where all that story hitting you at once. So you have that option, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, loving the direction. It's a great time to be a Green Lantern fan right now. Where the books are heading, we're getting some live action content. So, and there's just more to come, which is great to have.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll have plenty more to talk about in the coming months here in 2025. So stay tuned for more Lantern talk from all media fronts, be them comic books or live action film or television.
And action figures.
Of course, you're the action figure guru. And we'll have plenty of reviews on the Green Lantern figures that have been given to us and that are yet to come. So yeah, lots to look forward to, and lots to stay tuned to this very show for. So please do that. But in the meantime, if you want to talk with Donnie or I about anything Green Lantern, you can. Donnie, where do they track you down on socials?
You can find me on Facebook and, at least for now, TikTok, as well as Blue Sky as the Emerald Enthusiast. And, of course, check out all of my Green Lantern and other comic book related reviews on YouTube. Look me up. Let's talk comics. Let's talk collectibles. Let's talk Green Lantern.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter and Blue Sky at Adam_Leafsman. We have the Facebook group. Click the link. I will add you. We can continue the conversation there. But, remember that Green Lantern is forever. From the first time Hal and Carol professed their love for each other to the last. So long, everybody.
So long, everyone.